Welcome to the Explainer. How do you decide if something huge, like a new highway or a big environmental law, is actually a good idea? How do you even begin to weigh the pros and cons when you're talking about things like the value of a forest or even a human life? Well, there's a tool for that. It's powerful, it's controversial, and today we're diving deep into cost-benefit analysis.
All right, let's just jump right in with a huge real-world question. How do you decide if a billion-dollar highway is actually worth building? I mean, you might think, well, you just add up the costs, right? But it's so much more complicated than that. The real answer involves this kind of crazy web of calculations where analysts try to put a dollar value on everything. I'm talking everything from the concrete and steel all the way to, yes, the value of saving a human life.
And believe me, this isn't just some academic theory. Check this out. This is a real breakdown for a real highway. Analysts create these incredibly detailed tables to weigh every single possible impact. I mean, look at this thing. You've got the obvious stuff like construction costs, but then you see lines for horizon value and safety benefits, lives. It's wild. We're actually going to circle back to this exact table a little later to see how it all adds up.
Okay, so how in the world do you even begin to build a table like that? Where do those numbers come from? Well, it all starts with this specific framework. Let's get into what cost-benefit analysis really is.
So at its heart, cost-benefit analysis, or CBA, is really just a system for weighing the good against the bad. Think of it like a giant set of scales. But here's the kicker, and this is the most important part. To make the scales work, you have to convert everything, and I mean everything, into a single common unit. And that unit is money. That's the only way you can compare everything on an equal footing.
But why do we even need this? Can't we just let the market decide? Well, CBA is designed for situations where the free market kind of drops the ball. These are what economists call market failures. A classic example, a factory that pollutes a river. The factory gets the profits, but society pays the price for the cleanup. The market isn't accounting for that cost. Or what about something like a public park? It's great for everyone, but no single company is going to build it because it's not profitable. That's where CBA comes in. It gives the government a way to step in and figure out if these kinds of projects are a net positive for everyone.
All right, let's start with what seems like the easy part, right? How do you count the stuff you can, actually count, the obvious tangible costs and benefits?
To get this done, economists really lean on two core ideas. One for measuring everything that goes in, that's the costs, and one for everything that comes out, that's the benefits. First up is opportunity cost, and this is such a key idea. It's really about the true cost of something. See, the cost of building that highway isn't just the bill for the steel and the concrete. The real cost is the value of the next best thing we could have done with all that money, all that labor, and all those resources. Maybe we could have built a new hospital instead or a couple of schools. That's the opportunity cost.
Okay, so that's costs. What about the other side of the scale, the benefits? Well, benefits are measured by how much we as a society actually value them. And the way they try to capture this is with a concept called willingness to pay. Basically, how much would people be willing to shell out to get something good or avoid something bad?
So let's apply this to our highway, for example. The tangible costs are pretty straightforward, the kind of stuff you'd expect. You've got the huge price tag for construction, of course, then there's the money for maintenance year after year, and even the cost of building and staffing the toll booths. All that gets added to the cost side of the ledger.
And the tangible benefits? At first glance, they seem pretty clear too. People driving on the new highway are going to save money on gas and car repairs, and a huge one, they save time. And yes, that time gets a dollar value put on it. The new road even creates benefits for people who don't use it because it reduces traffic on the other routes. Okay, so counting up concrete and gasoline, that's one thing. But now we get to the part where this whole thing gets really tricky. And to be honest, super controversial. Because here's the central challenge of the whole endeavor. To make the analysis work, to get to that final number, you just have to convert everything into dollars. And that includes things that feel, priceless. How do you put a price tag on clean air, or the beauty of a forest, or even a human life? Now, economists have a word for these kinds of impacts: externalities. They're basically the side effects of a project that spill over and affect people who aren't directly involved. So, pollution from a factory that makes the neighbor sick, that's a classic negative externality. But a beautiful new park that raises everyone's property values, that's a positive one. And a really thorough cost-benefit analysis tries to find and put a price tag on every single one of them.
So how do they even attempt to do this? Well, one way they tackle it is by splitting value into two big buckets. First, you've got use value. That's pretty simple. It's the value you get from actually using something, like hiking in a forest. But then there's this other fascinating category called non-use value. This is the value people get from something even if they never ever use it. It's the pleasure you might get just from knowing that a pristine wilderness area exists, even if you never plan to go there.
And this non-use value concept might sound a bit abstract, but let me show you a perfect real-world example. When Baltimore was considering building a new baseball stadium, Camden Yards, the analysts ran the numbers. And you know what? Based on just ticket sales and concession stand jobs and all that, it didn't make sense. The project was a money loser. So to justify it, they had to look for value somewhere else. They calculated that the stadium would have an annual net cost to the taxpayers of over $10.5 million. That's right, every year. The direct, tangible costs were going to be more than $10 million higher than the direct, tangible benefits.
So for the stadium to be worth it, for the benefits to outweigh the costs, the analysts had to argue that this intangible value, this existence value, was massive. Basically, the simple civic pride and pleasure that residents of Maryland got from having the Orioles in Baltimore had to be worth more than that $10.64 million hole in the budget every single year.
Okay, so you've done all this work. You've monetized everything from asphalt to civic pride. You've put a dollar value on saving time and maybe even on saving lives. What happens next? How do you add it all up and actually make the final call?
Well, it's definitely not random. It's actually a very structured, step-by-step process. Analysts go through this whole checklist. They specify the alternatives, they identify every impact they can think of, they predict how those impacts will play out over time, and then they do the hard part, monetize them. A really crucial step in here is number 6, discounting. This is based on the idea that a dollar today is worth more than a dollar 20 years from now. So they discount all those future costs and benefits to find out what they're worth in today's money. It's only after all of that that they can finally compute the total value and make a recommendation. So let's go back to that highway analysis we saw at the beginning. Here's the final tally, what they call the net social benefit. And this is fascinating. Look at how the result completely changes depending on whose perspective you're taking. If you look at it from a global perspective, including everyone who benefits, the project is a huge win, almost $150 million. But if you only look at it from the provincial perspective, just for the local residents, the benefit is much, much smaller.
So at the end of the day, the decision rule seems simple. If the final number at the bottom of the spreadsheet, that net social benefit, is positive, the project gets a green light. The basic idea is that if the total benefits outweigh the total costs, then the people who win from the project could, in theory, pay back the people who lose and still have something left over. If that number is positive, it's considered a net win for society.
But, and this is a huge but, as we've seen, getting to that one single number is a road that's just paved with assumptions, estimates, and some really deep ethical judgments. And that brings us to the most important takeaway, a crucial reality check about what this tool really is and what it isn't. Look, at the end of the day, cost-benefit analysis is an absolutely powerful and frankly necessary tool. It gives us a structured way to think through incredibly complex decisions. But it's just that, a tool, not a perfect answer machine. This quote from a poem really hits it home, right? It reminds us of the limits of any analysis that tries to boil everything down to dollars and cents. And it leaves us with the real question we have to grapple with. What are the important truths, the ecological facts, the human values that simply can't be captured in a spreadsheet?